And I don't know, Sene, whether you want to now introduce the very final closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Stefano, for the fantastic session. And also the presenters, very interesting. Now we have reached to the point of closing. But before that, of course, the purpose of this workshop was not only to present some of the findings, but also to steer discussion and also motivate research. In line with that, Dr. Abi wants to make a couple of remarks regarding potential funding opportunities, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, afterwards we'll go to the quick closing session.
Thank you, Sinasha. Sorry for get crashing, even if it is not part of the agenda. I am the new director of the African Economic Research Consortium. I just moved to Nairobi on a special leave from my university, still to be confirmed, from University of Sheffield in the UK. 3 points. I think if you have followed the 59th biannual of the ARC conference in November, December time just last year, we discussed a lot about the current status of ARC. One of, I think, the conclusion that we have arrived at is that ARC should really do a lot of things differently to be fit for purpose. One of the ways that we can encourage that is by reaching out to disenfranchised research community, which used to submit a lot of research proposals and never got any replies. Therefore, I say to you that, okay, for sure, there was a leadership vacuum last year. Now the leadership is in place, except for a director of training. Within the department that I'm heading, I encourage you, early career researchers, senior researchers, to consider submitting your proposals into the thematic research arm of the consortium, as well as a collaborative one. On the thematic side, we are focusing on early career researchers. Therefore, if you just finished your PhD or you are about to finish your PhD, if you have a paper and a good idea, please send it. On the collaborative side, all senior researchers who have published in the past and who are also at the intersection of policy as well as research, you can send any research idea directly to me, to my email, and we will consider it and we will make sure that there is a potential to collaborate, partner, and fund it. It is really sobering to find out that some of the proposals submitted to the consortium were not reviewed over the last 2 years, and this is really shameful. I apologize on behalf of the consortium that we are not going to do that as far as I am there, hopefully with the support of colleagues at the consortium. The second one is writing big grant proposals to Horizon 2020 and other funding councils with think tanks. Yeah, if there are any representatives of think tanks and if you have ideas and if you want to raise funds, we can really mobilize a group of our network researchers, very rigorous frontier network researchers who are within the continent as well as outside the continent. So think tanks, please approach me and approach us with ideas. Finally, maybe directly speaking to Nemera policymakers, speak to the research community. We have a senior policy seminar, which was running since 1988 because ARC was there for many, many years. We talked to policymakers, decision makers, not only in country, but in a Pan-African context. So in the upcoming senior policy seminar or in the annual African Development Bank meetings in Nairobi, which is going to be in May, I think this year, because Juguna, who used to be our executive director, is a board chair as a finance minister of Kenya, is also going to be a core I think, orchestrator of that event. So I think with those short announcements and commercial break, please submit and let's have some conversation as well.
Thank you, Dr. Rabbi. Thank you. So now, without further ado, I will give the virtual floor to Kathie Krumm, our country director, who couldn't be here and who will join us via Zoom. Kathie, the virtual floor is yours for the closing remark.
Thank you, Seneca. First of all, thanks to Dr. Nemera, our Ministry of Planning and Development counterparts, and all the presenters and participants. Thanks for this opportunity to launch IGC's white paper, which again focused on how new technologies can allow low-income countries to chart a better development path. We did not have a dedicated session on energy, but obviously there are key opportunities there, as Dr. Nemera earlier mentioned, and perhaps he will say more. And of course, we had the opportunity to have further technical sections to go in more depth to some of the Ethiopia policy relevance in the areas of natural resources, agriculture, including social protection, of course, firms, jobs, and trade, and finally, the cities and urbanization challenges. Again, the purpose of the workshop, as Seneca mentioned, is to get guidance from policymakers on the key research challenges going forward. So without further ado, let me turn to Dr. Nemera to give us some guidance on where we go from here on this fascinating set of issues. Dr. Nemera?
Thank you, Kathie. I think I just popped out for a meeting and I missed a few sessions, but I already got updated, with the previous conversations we had with you and the team. I think what we had today is really impressive in terms of posing, policy issues and substantiating those policy issues with substance, research, and evidence. And as I've said in the morning, such platforms, such mobilization of knowledge should always, continue. As our colleague from ERC now made, a point. Also, I think as a government, which as a Ministry of Planning and Development, we always, want to create that opportunity as much as, the time and the opportunities that we have to engage with the research community, and we shall continue to do so, especially going forward with the homegrown economic reform. We have really a major reform ideas at the macro level, structural levels, and also sector-specific, reform ideas. And these reform ideas, especially in terms of reforming our, holistic development policy frameworks, they need to be substantiated with evidences, statistics, facts, and researches and dialogues such as this. And I do hope probably on the other platform we will discuss how to take this forward more to make, institutionalize and also speak across different stakeholders, because so many partners are trying to help the government of Ethiopia across different disciplines, sectors in terms of research and such, capacity building. I think, as I've always said, the issues that you've mentioned in here, especially the energy, of course, you've just mentioned, probably on the going forward, this is an area where a major reform is expected. On one side, on the supply side, Ethiopia is yet to harness the potential that renewable energy provides. and we need to do more, researches on those, how Ethiopia could go beyond hydros to diversify the sources of energy, not only diversify, not only increasing the installed capacity of energy production, but also reaching households, reaching cities, reaching also farmers, so to promote productivity and industrialization. I think areas that I've mentioned earlier by Professor Stefano in terms of how could we really, in terms of the grid distributions, especially connecting the solar potential, of course, as it stands now from the previous policy idea that these technologies are very expensive and they were not part of the grid distribution of the energies. Now we're talking about new technologies are evolving, and from Ethiopia's context view of attracting investment is how could Ethiopia, harness this potential, given the global challenges and also the macroeconomic challenges that we have in place. These investments cannot be done only by government, but the private sector. Of course, government needs to do a lot of reforms in terms to make the overall business and investment climate conducive enough. But doing that just alone is not enough. Domestic resource mobilization is limited, and global challenges, looming. And how could, developing economies could harness that potential, mobilize the resources enough to fulfill, both agendas, achieving inclusive and sustainable growth, at the same time tackling, climate changes. There are also other, institutional aspects in the Ethiopian context in terms of energy sector. How should we manage, if managing is the right word, going forward in terms of privatizing on the demand side as well, in terms of distributions, in terms of other services. That speaks to also the tariff regime that we have in place in Ethiopia, which of course at the policy level, and also I'm sure many people would argue with me that the tariff regime that we have is not really sustainable given the high investment that the government and the sector itself requires. So in the energy sector, I think we need to push on that regard. And the other aspect, I probably we need to more engagement is about the firm growth or the private sector growth in the manufacturing sector. This is one of the most, structurally a major bottleneck for Ethiopia. Our manufacturing sector, especially linking with the primary sectors in terms of value addition, secondary sectors, it's over time not showing, an encouraging path. Let alone speaking about, climate change shocks and other, overlapping shocks. The nature of the farmers' growth in Ethiopia is a bit, worrisome. There are, of course, lots of issues in there, different researchers mentions one side, the input supply in terms of tackling the infrastructure and connectivity gap. That also speaks to the energy context that I've mentioned earlier, and also other hard infrastructures. And the other areas, probably last time also I've discussed with Stefano, is the incentive structure, especially when we speak about subsidizing firms. At the same time, talking about the potential of raising tax mobilizations. These are a policy dilemmas for least developed countries. And at the macro level, you wanted to put in place innovative way the government should structure itself. This comes through not only tax mobilization, but how investments are made. And on the other side, this debt distress is one of a major bottleneck. That's why I mentioned earlier one of a point that when we discuss these issues, the macro level trends and the global trends are really important, and we would like to see this more engagement, not only in a pure manufacturing sectors, but other modern sectors as well, even the finance sector, the modern service sectors, such as ICT is one of a good potential in place, but these major bottlenecks are there, and we need to really connect these issues by defining and supporting a government in a sense of appropriate prioritization, sequencing, pragmatism of also, from Ethiopian context is the right policy or options in that regard. The other area, of course, I mean, this is the session I've missed. When you speak about shocks, not only really climate change, but other shocks as well. Urban-based economies are the most, vulnerable in Ethiopian context. Largely, the industry sector that I've mentioned earlier. In addition to that, the service sectors and how cities should evolve, how cities should be managed is one of the areas where, as a country, I would say, lag behind in terms of the balanced approach of, city growth and also the structural bottlenecks that we have in place. And these are also area that, we should push further and have more, discussions in these areas. Probably, the specific we might discuss in our next engagement, probably bilaterally with the IGC team, and how to go forward and trying to tailor, these broader issues that I'm mentioning. The most important that I've most really impressed and liked is the social protection in relation to agriculture, rural development, and also the job opportunities in rural areas. I think when we speak about, beside the challenge that I've mentioned earlier about the modern economies, urban-centered economies, in the next, I would say, medium to long term, a major priority should be agriculture and rural areas. The productive capacities in rural areas should be enhanced, and the economic opportunities in the rural areas should be supported. On one side, I do understand, so to make our rural households more resilient to shocks, social protection is really fundamental. I'm not only talking about PSNP, even going forward, a major technology supplies, input supplies, fertilizer, are getting, those vulnerable households so that we can, gradually address, not only trying to support them in poverty, but also address the structural, underlying cause of why they became, poor by providing them, that incentive structure. And the issues raised in the morning by Stefano and also the research papers are really fundamental. And probably some of the research papers are already, maturing, so to make, I don't know, policy briefs or probably have more engagement is how we can, align this with the quickly expanding agricultural, support that the government is doing over the past, few years, and also continue to do. The PSNP is one area, the fertilizer, and also other input supply. For example, we're expanding about climate smart irrigation, and one of the mechanisms we are trying to do is through supply of water pumps, because water rivers are not, that conducive enough in terms of infrastructure to reach most of the most vulnerable. But these are, an important short to medium term intervention. And also special variety supplies, climate heat tolerant, crop varieties are also in areas where we're doing. And these should be aligned with efficient social protection, mechanisms, targeting the right individuals. And also the graduation approach we were talking, in the morning is really pertinent. And I'm so glad that I've attended today. And probably we should continue further our engagement, and perhaps do more often such engagements as our colleague from ARC, mentioned earlier. We are so grateful as a government, as a Ministry of Planning, for the continued, engagement of IGC with the Policy Study Institute and also other government public organs. And thank you very much. And step by step, the bridge between policy making and knowledge industry will be bridged through such engagements. And thank you for your continued partnership and engagement. And I stop there and thank you.
Thank you very much. Of course, Dr. Nemera, very insightful. Stefano, on behalf of the research community, of course, IGC, but also research community in general, any observations and takeaways to guide us? And then we will close and hopefully beat the traffic.
Sure. It's very hard to follow after such a brilliant conclusion from Dr. Nemera, so I'll try to be brief and to the point. And in a sense, I think what I'm taking away personally from today is can be summarized with 4 words. Word number 1 is innovation. So we heard a lot about innovation, the potential for innovation, in particular private sector growth will come through the production and diffusion of innovations that raise productivity. So a key theme that basically ran through a lot of the presentation, a lot of the session, for example, the climate information services, thinking about new seeds or the green jobs. So from the first to the last presentation, in fact, the green jobs, when we were discussing the use of ICT and the focus on non-smokestack industries, innovation was the center stage. One crucial area of innovation is solar energy, which did not get to really discuss it, but I hope it will stay on our radar as a research institute, because it sounds like it's an area where there is both a lot of policy interest and lots of academically interesting questions. Innovation, the first word. Second word is resilience. We heard a lot about shocks to firms, shocks to workers in urban areas, shocks to rural dwellers, people living in the countryside, earning their livelihood from agriculture. So resilience was really at the forefront of lots of the things that we discussed, and jointly with the resilience, what can we do about resilience? Of course, development will be protective in a sense, but we need to do more. We need to think of social protection that is both well suited to the current challenges, so social protection projects that really foster adaptive behaviors, and social protection projects that create productive capacity. So this second theme of resilience and what we do about it was also very big. The third one was I wrote here resources and incentives. I guess I could write money. Lots of the things that we discussed require funding. We need to think about resource mobilization, and we need to think about setting up hard incentive schemes that will not just nudge, but really encourage the different actors in the economy to move in the direction that we want. Here, in a sense, I mean, although whenever we talk about resource mobilization, it seems like always an insurmountable mountain, perhaps there are some synergies that can be explored going forward. For example, we started briefly touching upon different forms of environmental taxation, taxing either greenhouse gases or, for example, air pollutants. There are some very interesting pilot projects in India, for example, establishing markets establishing first permits and then markets of air pollution permits. And there, basically, you can get into a virtuous scenario where both you set up these new schemes to raise revenue, so the firms that are generating the externalities have to pay for them, but also those very revenues can be reinvested right away into subsidizing precisely the kind of innovative activity that we want those firms to make. That's the essence of the Acemoglu model that Teddy referred to, the fact that we are dealing with 2 externalities, not 1. There is a growth externalities. We need the firms to grow. We need the firms to become more productive. Not all the returns to their innovation activities are captured by firm owners, so we want to provide them with a boost through subsidies. But then there is a second externalities, which is the environmental externality. And because we have 2 problems, we need 2 solutions. I mean, of course, the country where I live, the UK, there is this saying that you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, which is a very non-environmentally friendly saying, of course. But by killing 2 birds with 1 stone, it's something that happens only very rarely. We have 2 problems. We need 2 tools. And so this resource mobilization discussion, it's very important, it's crucial, but I just don't want it to be kind of colored in necessarily in a negative light. The resources that would be raised by setting up some of these corrective taxes can immediately be fed back into the economy, towards firms to foster the innovation we need. And finally, the last word or two words were thinking global. A lot of what we discussed today was very specific. We went to Awassa to see what happened to the workers that were displaced in Awassa. We went to Addis to see the migration intentions of some of the workers in Addis. We looked at some of the coffee producers in some other parts of the country. But there are these common threads that link all of these, that are related to the institutions that manage this process, that are related to the macro shocks that are affecting the institution and the economy's ability to deliver. And even more globally, there is the international arena and the fact that there is a real need for resources to be moved from rich countries that are most responsible for some of the environmental crises we're facing to some of the low-income countries that face the consequences of those crises. So resilience, money, and thinking global. This was a fantastic workshop. These are my closing remarks, but it was really wonderful to see the engagement. So thank you so much, in particular to our honored guest, Dr. Nemera, but also to the great presenters. It was a really remarkable set of presentations, and to a uniquely insightful set of questions. You really pushed the bar also on the quality of questions. Other workshops will struggle to match the quality of the questions we got in this one. So thank you so much. And I pass the word back to Kathie for some concluding remarks.
Well, now I certainly cannot follow both Dr. Nemera and Professor Caria. Let me not keep you any further. Again, thanks also to all of you behind the scenes, Derek, without whose effort this wouldn't have been possible. We will be sure that all the materials and discussions are placed online for those who had to miss sessions or want to do further follow-up. And again, of course, we will be taking this further in terms of IGC's own research, but also research community more broadly, including AERC. Thank you all.